A millionaire obstetrician delivers a baby for a dying woman on the street. Love is born with the baby's first cry. The night was bitter cold, the kind of cold that bit through gloves and sliced into bone. Downtown traffic was gridlocked, headlights smeared across slick streets like smudged stars. Under the shadow of an overpass, the air felt denser, quieter, save for the occasional honk or the hum of engines idling in frustration. Evan Hale sat behind the wheel of his black SUV, watching his breath fog up the windshield. The city was suffocating in ice, and the snowflakes drifting down were no longer romantic. They were cruel, sharp reminders of a winter that refused to loosen its grip. He had just left a medical conference uptown, where he had been the keynote speaker, praised for his surgical precision, his visionary ideas, his status as one of the country's youngest and wealthiest obstetricians. But at that moment, none of that mattered. He just wanted to get home. His phone buzzed on the seat beside him. Another congratulatory message. He ignored it. Tired, impatient, he tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. Then something in his peripheral vision made him turn. At the far edge of the sidewalk, beneath the overpass lights, a figure crumpled near the guardrail. For a second, he thought it was a pile of old blankets. Then it moved. Evan's instincts snapped to life. He threw the car into park, grabbed his coat, and stepped into the freezing night. The cold punched him in the chest, but he didn't stop. As he approached, the figure became clearer. A young woman, her body hunched over, one arm clutching her swollen belly. Her breaths were short and rapid, and her face was pale beneath the hood of an oversized jacket. She looked no older than her mid-20s. "Miss?" Evan crouched down. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes flickered open, wide and filled with terror. Her lips trembled, not just from cold, but from pain. I can't, it hurts," she gasped. "Please, don't let my baby die. Don't let my baby die cold." Her voice was barely above a whisper, cracked and desperate. "Are you in labor?" he asked, his voice tight with urgency. "Are you alone?" She gave a weak nod, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I have no one." Evan's pulse quickened. He grabbed his phone, dialing emergency services with one hand while using the other to check her pulse and breathing. "This is Dr. Evan Hale. I have a woman in active labor under the 9th Street overpass. She's hypothermic and in distress. We need an ambulance immediately." "ETA 15 minutes, the dispatcher replied. He cursed under his breath. 15 minutes was too long. He looked down at the woman, who had started to moan low and deep, the way women did when contractions overtook them. "What's your name?" he asked, unbuttoning his coat and wrapping it around her shoulders. "June," she whispered. "June, listen to me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You and your baby are going to be okay, but we don't have time to wait. You're going to have to deliver right here." Her eyes widened. No, I can't." "Yes, you can," he said. "I'm a doctor. I've delivered hundreds of babies. You can trust me." She whimpered, another contraction ripping through her. She gripped his forearm with surprising strength. Evan laid her gently on the coat, cushioning her head with his scarf. The ground was hard and cruel, but he didn't let that stop him. He quickly assessed her vitals, pulled on gloves from his medical bag in the trunk, and prepared as best he could. "You're fully dilated," he said. "You need to push, June, with everything you've got." She screamed, the sound echoing off concrete and steel. "Good, just like that. You're doing great." The next minutes felt like hours. Evan guided her through each contraction, his hands steady, voice low and encouraging. The city faded around them. No more traffic, no more cold. Just a woman fighting to bring life into the world. Then, suddenly, a small cry pierced the night. Evan lifted the newborn into the air, heart pounding. A girl, tiny, pink, squirming, alive. He quickly wrapped the baby in his shirt beneath the coat, pressing her against June's chest to keep her warm. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "You did it," June sobbed with relief, her arms trembling as she held her child close. The sound of sirens grew near, but Evan barely heard them. He was too focused on the fragile, miraculous scene before him. Under the harsh glare of street lamps and the roar of an ambulance approaching, a child had taken her first breath. And something in Evan's heart shifted, quietly, powerfully, forever. The sirens grew louder until the ambulance finally skidded to a stop on the icy pavement. Paramedics rushed out, their movements fluid and precise, a dance rehearsed 1,000 times but no less urgent. Evan stayed close, brushing snow from June's tangled hair as they gently lifted her onto the stretcher. He climbed into the back with her and the newborn, never letting go of her hand. Her skin was icy to the touch, her lips pale, and her breath came in shallow, stuttering gasps. "She's losing too much blood," he told the emergency medical technician, his voice tight with professional urgency. "She needs fluids, oxygen, and close monitoring, immediately." The emergency medical technician nodded, already working. Evan adjusted the oxygen mask over June's face and pressed her fingers gently. Her eyelids fluttered. "Don't leave her, please," she mumbled, voice no louder than a breath. "I won't," he said softly, leaning closer. "I promise. She's safe. You both are." In the chaos of flashing lights and the steady beep of monitors, the ambulance raced through the night. Inside, Evan's world had narrowed to two fragile beings, one who had already defied the odds, and one who was still fighting. At the hospital, the moment he stepped out of the vehicle, recognition rippled across the emergency room staff. Evan Hale wasn't just any doctor, he was a name, a symbol of excellence. Nurses made way instantly, and within seconds June was wheeled into a treatment room. Evan handed the newborn to the neonatal unit, his hands gentle but firm. "She was born in cold conditions. Hypothermia is a concern. Keep her under the warmer. Monitor oxygen saturation." "Yes, Dr. Hale," a nurse responded, taking the baby with careful precision. Evan didn't sit down. He moved back and forth between June's room and the neonatal unit, checking vitals, consulting with residents, reviewing labs. His white shirt was wrinkled and damp from the storm, his tie-loosened hair a mess. But no one dared ask him to rest. There was something raw in his focus, something more than medicine at play. 2 hours passed. The blood transfusion had stabilized her vitals, and fluids had restored some color to her cheek. When he finally stepped back into her room, she was propped up against a pillow, her breathing easier, her expression distant but alert. She turned her head slowly when she saw him. Her eyes, though tired, held the same wary strength he'd seen on that rain-slicked sidewalk. "You stayed," she rasped. "I said I would," he replied, pulling a chair beside her bed. His voice had softened, stripped of the authority he used in operating rooms. Now it was just a man speaking to a woman he hadn't been able to stop thinking about. There was silence between them, thick with unspoken emotion. "Thank you," she whispered, looking down at her hands, "for everything, but I'll be leaving soon as I can walk." He frowned, forehead creasing. "Leaving? This place?" she said, eyes scanning the white walls and soft lighting. "It's too clean, too safe. It's not for people like me." "June, you just gave birth under a highway," he said gently, searching her face. "You nearly died. Your baby could have died." "I know," she said, her voice clipped, defensive, "but I've lived worse." He studied her, really looked at her, the hollow under her eyes, the bruises that weren't physical, the exhaustion that lived in her bones. "Where would you even go?" She hesitated. "Back to the park or under the 5th Street Bridge. It's not so bad if you find a dry spot." "You were planning to raise a newborn like that?" Her shoulders tensed. "I've been on my own since I was 16. I'm not scared of it." "You shouldn't have to be," he said quietly. "Not anymore." She didn't reply. Her eyes flicked to the clock, then to the baby bag on the floor, like she was already calculating her exit. The next morning, Eben stood outside her room holding a plain paper bag, inside clean clothes, soft socks, travel-size toiletries, and a pack of newborn diapers. When June saw him walk in, she sighed heavily, bracing herself. "I told you," she said, arms crossed, "I'm leaving soon." "And I told you," he replied, setting the bag down gently, "you're not going back to the street." She narrowed her eyes. "Why do you care?" He didn't blink. "Because no one else does, and because you're not just anyone. You're the woman who gave birth in a storm and held her daughter like a warrior. You didn't give up. That matters." Her lip trembled, but she held herself still. "I have a place," he said, his tone softening. "It's quiet, safe. There's an old greenhouse behind my house. No one uses it. It's dry, warm, private. You and your daughter can stay there, as long as you need." She looked stunned, confused. "Why would you do that for me?" "It's not charity," he said firmly. "I'm not offering pity. I'm offering space, room to breathe, to think, to be something more than what the world keeps calling you." She blinked fast, eyes welling. "And if I say no, then I'll still worry about that little girl sleeping in the cold." He paused. "But it's your choice." June stared at him for a long moment, then slowly, biting her lip to keep it from trembling too much, she nodded. "Just until I find my feet." Evan smiled, something soft breaking through the clinical distance. "Deal." Later that day, as she settled into the passenger seat of his car, baby Lily nestled in her arms. The clouds finally parted. Sunlight spilled onto the dashboard, and for the first time in what felt like years, June closed her eyes and let herself feel warm. Not just from the heat, but from the presence of someone who wasn't trying to fix her, just willing to stay. The greenhouse had become a sanctuary. Warmed by heaters and soft sunlight, it was filled with hanging plants, the scent of earth, and the gentle sounds of baby Lily's cooing. June had kept it immaculate, cleaner than any place she'd stayed in years. She found herself waking up earlier each day, tidying, folding tiny clothes, tending to the seedlings Evan had let her care for. But what truly lit a fire inside her was the time she spent volunteering at the community clinic Evan ran 3 days a week. After some convincing, June asked him timidly one afternoon, "Do you think I could help? At the clinic?" Evan had looked surprised, then nodded. "You want to work?" "I want to feel useful," she said quietly. "I don't have degrees or fancy training, but I can clean, organize, talk to people. I've seen enough pain to know how to sit with someone through it." He smiled. "That's more qualification than most," so she began showing up, early and eager. She helped with waiting room check-ins, made tea for nervous patients, and offered tissues to mothers holding ultrasound photos. Everyone who met her saw the kindness in her, even if she still struggled to see it herself. Then one late afternoon, just as the sun dipped low and Evan was finishing up paperwork in his office, his phone buzzed. "Lily has a fever," June said, panic threading her voice. "She's burning up and I don't know what to do." "I'm on my way." He drove straight there. June met him at the greenhouse door, barefoot, eyes wide with fear, her hair in disarray. Lily was in her arms, flushed and whimpering. Evan quickly took over, checking Lily's temperature, examining her ears, monitoring her breathing. "It's a high-grade fever, but her lungs are clear, no rash. Might be viral." He crushed a fever-reducing tablet, mixed it in juice, and fed it gently to the baby, then soaked towels in lukewarm water to bring down her temperature. He worked with the quiet confidence of someone who had saved lives for a living. But in his every touch, there was care, not just expertise. June watched from the corner, arms wrapped tightly around herself. As hours passed and Lily's temperature began to ease, Evan stayed, sitting on the floor with her in his lap, whispering softly, rubbing her back until she drifted to sleep. "You didn't have to stay," June whispered. He looked up at her, his voice low. "I didn't want to leave." She stared at him, her chest heavy. The words came slowly, the kind you hide for too long. "I was 19 when I met him, Gavin. Thought he was my future. When I got pregnant, he told me I was ruining his life. His parents paid me to disappear. I had nowhere to go, slept in shelters, on buses, under bridges." Her voice cracked. "When the contractions started, I was alone, on a bench. I thought, maybe it's better if we both didn't make it." Evan's eyes darkened, but not with pity, with quiet, burning anger for the world that had failed her. "But you did make it," he said gently. "And you didn't just survive, you kept Lily alive, every day, with nothing but your will." June wiped at her cheeks. "Sometimes I don't know how I'm still here." He stood, placing the sleeping baby in the crib. Then he turned to her. "You're here because you refused to give up. That's more than strength, June. That's grace." She looked at him, truly looked at him, and in his eyes saw no judgment, no rescue fantasy, only recognition. Recognition of a soul that had walked through fire and survived with love intact. It started with a knock, sharp, deliberate, and filled with a weight that made June's entire body stiffen. She had just finished nursing Lily and was gently rocking her to sleep inside the greenhouse, the faint scent of soil and lavender filling the air. Outside, snow flurries danced against the frost-linked glass. The world felt quiet, like a rare moment of peace had finally found them. But then came the voice, low, unfamiliar, too sure of itself. "June? You in there?" She froze. Heart thudding, she tiptoed toward the window and peered through the blurry frost. Her breath caught. 3 figures stood just beyond the garden path. One of them, tall and sharply dressed, wore the same arrogant smirk that had haunted her dreams for years. Gavin! His coat was cashmere, his hair slicked back like always, his hands in his pockets like he owned the ground he stood on. Flanking him were 2 more, an older man in a tailored overcoat, and a woman with tight lips and a handbag that probably cost more than June had ever made in a year. His parents. Her throat tightened. She instinctively moved in front of Lily's crib, shielding it with her body, then stepped outside slowly, clutching her jacket tighter around her chest. The cold bit through her thin sleeves, but it couldn't compare to the chill rising through her bones. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice stronger than she felt. Gavin's smirk widened. "Long time no see, June." His mother looked around the garden with open disdain. "So this is where you've ended up. A greenhouse in someone else's backyard. How quaint." June clenched her jaw. "What do you want?" Gavin stepped forward, hands still in his pockets, posture relaxed, like this was just a casual visit. "We're here for Lily." She blinked, the words sinking like stones in her stomach. "What?" "She's my daughter," he said. "I have rights, and my parents and I agree she shouldn't be growing up in a place like this. It's beneath her." "She's not a toy you left behind and now want to claim," June snapped, stepping between them and the door. Gavin's father took a step forward. His voice was cool, rehearsed, legal. "You're not married. You have no income, no fixed assets. You were, until recently, living on the streets. Your lifestyle is not fit for raising a child, and we've already filed a petition for custody." June stumbled back, gripping the doorframe. "You can't do this. He left us. He abandoned us before she was even born." Gavin tilted his head. "Let's not twist things. I offered you money. You chose the hard road. You offered me hush money to disappear. And yet," his mother cut in, "you still managed to trap a doctor into taking care of your mess. Clever girl." June's face went white. "You don't know anything about us." "I know our granddaughter deserves better," the woman hissed. "That child carries our bloodline. She won't be raised by some gutter girl with a pity address." Gavin stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We've already got legal representation. If you cooperate, we'll be generous. If not, well, you know how these things go. You have nothing. We have everything. The courts will eat you alive, June." Her vision blurred. Lily's soft breathing echoed from inside, and suddenly the cold didn't matter. She slammed the door without another word. Inside, her knees gave out. She slid to the floor, clutching Lily against her chest, rocking back and forth. Her mind raced. Court dates, media, lawyers, public humiliation, losing Lily. No, 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 no. That night, she didn't sleep. The past came crashing down like a flood, images of shelters, park benches, freezing nights with a growing belly and no hope. And now, when she had finally found some stability, some warmth, it was all being ripped away. By morning, she had made her decision. She packed the bare essentials: diapers, formula, a blanket, a change of clothes. She placed Lily in a sling across her chest and tucked the little girl's head beneath her chin. Her cheeks were damp with tears. At sunrise, she slipped out the back gate. Her feet moved quickly, urgently. She would run, just like last time, and no one would find her. Not Gavin, not his money, not his power. But before she reached the alleyway, a voice broke through the fog. "June!" She spun around. Evan. He stood in scrubs, his hair tousled, his coat half-buttoned. His car was parked crookedly on the sidewalk, hazard lights blinking. His eyes scanned her from head to toe, her duffel, her swollen eyes, the baby in her arms. "Where are you going?" he asked, breathless. She looked down. "I have to leave. They're going to take her. I can't let that happen." "June," he said, stepping closer, "you think running will keep her safe. You'll be alone again, hungry, sleeping in bus terminals. I've done it before. And almost died doing it." "What choice do I have?" she snapped. "Gavin has lawyers, he has money. They'll bury me in paperwork before I ever see a courtroom. Not if I stand beside you." She froze. "Why would you do that? This isn't your problem." Evan's voice softened. "It became my problem the moment you handed me Lily, trusting me to protect her life. I'm in this now, whether you want me to be or not." June shook her head, tears spilling freely. "You don't understand. I can't do this alone, again." Evan reached out, gently taking the strap of the sling from her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore." She looked at him, eyes wide with disbelief, years of pain and fear carved into every glance, and yet, in that moment, standing on a back street in the gray of morning, with her daughter's heartbeat pressed to hers, something in his voice, in his steadiness, made her pause, and that pause was the first step toward something she had never dared hope for. Home. Rain pelted the pavement in heavy sheets, the streetlights casting blurred halos across the slick asphalt. At the edge of the city's forgotten corners, a dimly lit bus stop flickered weakly under the downpour. There, June stood shivering, her arms wrapped tightly around a bundled Lily, the infant softly whimpering against the cold and her mother's trembling chest. June's hair was soaked, her coat clung to her skin, and her breath came in ragged bursts. The duffel bag at her feet sagged with damp clothes and formula, its zipper half broken, barely holding together. Tears mingled with the rain on her cheeks as she rocked Lily, whispering, "I'm so sorry. I'm trying." Headlights cut through the storm. A black SUV pulled up, tires hissing against the road. The door flew open, and Evan stepped out, his own clothes quickly soaked. He walked straight to her without hesitation. "June," he said breathlessly, "what are you doing out here?" She looked up, startled, her face pale and stricken. "How did you left without saying a word." "I knew where you'd go." His eyes moved to Lily, then back to June. "You're freezing. Come on." "I can't," she whispered. "They'll take her. I can't go back. I can't let them win." "You don't have to let them win." "I have nothing, Evan," she said, her voice cracking. "No lawyer, no house, no name. What court would ever choose me over them?" He took off his coat and gently wrapped it around her shoulders. Then he held her by the arms, firm but tender. "June, you don't need to run anymore," he said, voice steady. "You're not alone." She bit her lip, eyes brimming again. "But I'm not strong enough for this fight." "Then let me fight it," he said, and his voice softened into something more intimate, something weighted with a decision made deep within him. "Marry me." June blinked. "What?" "Marry me," he repeated. "Legally. If you're my wife, and Lily is my legal stepdaughter, no judge will give her to them. I have standing, I have credibility, and I have the resources to keep you both safe." She stared at him as if he'd grown another head. "Bevan, you can't be serious." "I'm dead serious," he said. "This isn't about charity. It's about protection, about giving Lily a shield neither of us can offer alone." June shook her head, stunned. "You don't have to do this for us." "I'm not doing it out of obligation," he said. "I'm doing it because you and Lily matter. More than I expected. More than I'm ready to admit." Her lips parted, but no words came. She simply stared at him, 1,000 questions caught in her throat. Rain fell around them in waves, but neither moved. "You'd really do this?" she asked, almost afraid to believe it. "I would," he said, "right now if you'll let me." June looked down at Lily, her baby's cheek pressed against her collarbone, tiny fingers curled into her damp sweater. Then she looked back at Evan, this man who had delivered her child in a storm, who had offered her warmth when the world turned its back, who now stood soaked in the rain with a hand stretched toward forever. "Okay," she whispered. He didn't smile. He just nodded once, firmly, like he had just made a promise he would die keeping. Within an hour, they were at a 24-hour courthouse annex. The clerk on duty looked up from her desk in surprise as they entered, clothes still damp, a baby cradled between them. "We need a marriage license," Evan said simply. "Tonight." Paperwork was signed, forms filed. June's hand shook as she scribbled her name, and when the justice of the peace asked them to exchange vows, Evan looked at her and said only one thing: "I promise I will protect you. Always." June could hardly speak, but her lips trembled around a reply: "And I promise I won't run anymore." There were no rings, no music, no friends in attendance, just the hum of fluorescent lights, the weight of soaked clothes, and the sound of Lily's soft breathing in her arms. But when they stepped back out into the rain, now quieter, now gentler, something had changed. June Hale. The name sounded strange, new, but it was hers now, and so was the man walking beside her. No longer strangers, no longer two people from different worlds. Now, legally, and for the first time emotionally, they were a family. The afternoon sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the quiet street near Lily's daycare. June had just picked her up, the little girl bundled in a pink jacket, holding tightly to her mother's hand as they walked toward the corner. June hummed a lullaby softly, smiling down at her daughter's sleepy eyes. But then she felt it, the sudden tension in the air, a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. From across the street, a black SUV screeched to a stop, the doors flung open, and June's blood turned to ice. Gavin's mother stepped out first, heels clicking on pavement, eyes burning with fury. Behind her, two large men in dark coats followed, their expressions unreadable. Then came Gavin, his face twisted into a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. June froze. No, not here. Not now. "June!" Gavin's mother shouted, her voice shrill and laced with venom. "You thought you could steal my granddaughter and parade her around like a prize?" Lily tightened her grip on June's hand, instinctively sensing danger. June backed away, heart pounding. "Leave us alone." "You filthy little parasite," the woman snarled, striding forward. "You seduced that doctor and conned your way into our bloodline. But that baby is ours." June turned, pulling Lily behind her, but one of the men grabbed her arm. She screamed, "Let go of me!" The other grabbed for Lily, who began crying loudly, reaching for her mother. In a flash, Gavin moved forward, eyes wild. "She belongs with us," he hissed. "Give her to me." "No!" June cried, clutching Lily to her chest. Gavin lunged, his hands grabbing at the blanket wrapped around Lily. His mother shrieked behind him, "That child has pure blood. She's not meant to be raised by garbage." The sound of tires screeching pierced the chaos. A second later, a blur moved between them. Evan. Without hesitation, without a word, he delivered a punch square to Gavin's jaw. The force sent Gavin stumbling backward, crashing to the sidewalk. The man who had grabbed June released her, stunned. Evan's eyes burned as he stepped between June and the others, shielding her and Lily with his body. "Touch them again," he growled, voice low and shaking with rage. "And I swear to God, you won't leave here standing." "You assaulted him," Gavin's mother screeched. "You attempted to kidnap a child in broad daylight," Evan snapped back. "And you laid hands on my wife." The sound of sirens cut through the air. Blue and red lights flashed as two police cruisers pulled up to the curb. Officers leapt out, hands on weapons, barking orders. June stood frozen, Lily sobbing against her chest, until one of the officers gently pulled her aside. "Ma'am, are you all right? Did they hurt you or your child?" She could barely speak. "They tried to take her. They grabbed her." Another officer knelt by Gavin, now handcuffed and groaning, while his parents screamed about lawsuits and lawyers. But none of it mattered anymore, because justice, for once, arrived on time. All four were arrested on the spot for attempted kidnapping, assault, and harassment. Evan gave his statement calmly, clearly, with the fury of a man who'd nearly watched his family be torn apart. June was taken to the hospital to be checked for bruises. Lily was examined but declared physically unharmed. Emotionally, though, both were shaken. That night the news broke. Cell phone footage from a bystander, Gavin's mother screaming slurs, the scuffle, Evan's punch, the police arriving went viral. Headlines exploded. Millionaire doctor saves wife and baby from daylight attack. Mob attempted to kidnap child. Father fights back. Evan Hale's heroic defense of family melts hearts online. Social media overflowed with support. Justice for June and Doctor with the Heart trended for days. People across the country posted messages of encouragement. Donations poured in for the Hale family's new foundation for single mothers, and June's past was no longer a weapon used against her. It became her strength. And as for Evan, he was no longer just a doctor or a wealthy philanthropist. He was the man who stood in the storm and chose to fight not just with fists, but with love. The garden behind the clinic was in full bloom. Wild flowers swayed in the soft breeze. White drapes fluttered from the wooden arch that stood at the center of the grassy courtyard. Paper lanterns lined the fence, and laughter echoed gently in the late afternoon light. It had been 1 year since the rain-soaked night when Evan had asked June to marry him, not for love, but for protection. But today their marriage was not a legal necessity. Today it was a celebration of love born from resilience, faith, and something unbreakable. June stood behind a sheer curtain in a modest lace dress, her hair pinned with tiny white jasmine blossoms. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the hem, but her eyes sparkled with a quiet joy that radiated far beyond the fabric of the gown. She looked outside and saw the chairs filling with familiar faces, nurses from the clinic, women from the shelter who had found their voice again, and mothers like her, whom she now mentored. The new Nest Center, the nonprofit she had co-founded with Evan, had already helped dozens of women escape abuse, homelessness, and hopelessness. The greenhouse where she once lived was now a warm community lounge filled with books, baby cribs, and fresh hope. Beside the arch stood Evan, in a navy blue suit, adjusting his cuff while smiling nervously at the flower girl zigzagging through the rows of chairs. "Lily, sweetheart, you're not supposed to run just yet," he chuckled. The little girl turned in her puffed pink princess dress and ran straight into his arms. "But I missed you." He scooped her up, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "You'll see me in a second when we walk Mommy down the aisle." "Okay, but I still get to throw flowers, right?" she asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "Every single one," Evan grinned. The music began. A soft instrumental played by one of the clinic's patients on an old violin. Lily skipped forward, scattering petals, then twirled and waited at the front as June stepped into view. Every head turned, every heart hushed. Evan's breath caught as he saw her. She walked slowly, carefully, as if stepping into a life she had once only dreamed of. Her eyes never left his. When she reached the arch, he extended his hand. She took it, the officiant began, but June barely heard the words. She could feel Lily's tiny fingers laced with hers on one side and Evan's steady grip on the other. The moment was complete. "Would you like to say your vows?" the officiant asked. June nodded. Her voice was quiet, but clear. "Evan, when you asked me to marry you, it wasn't for love. It was to save me, but you didn't just save me. You gave me back myself. You gave Lily a future. You gave brokenness a home. From a promise I never expected, you created something extraordinary." Her eyes shimmered. "From one lost soul to another. Thank you for never letting go." Evan blinked rapidly, then took her hands in his. "June, I thought I knew what strength looked like. I saw it in surgeries, in success, in numbers. But then I met you, and you showed me that real strength is waking up when you want to disappear. It's choosing love when all you've known is fear." He paused, breath thick. "You showed me what family means, and it's not about blood or wealth or last names. It's about who you fight for. And I will fight for you, every day for the rest of my life." The officiant smiled. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again. But this time for real." Cheers erupted. Lily clapped her hands wildly, and Evan leaned in, kissing June with a softness that told her everything she ever needed to know. Later, as the sun set and the guests danced on the lawn, June stood at the edge of the garden, watching Lily chase fireflies. Evan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Tired yet, Mrs. Hale?" She leaned back into him. "Not even close." He kissed the top of her head. June looked across the garden, at the women she once cried with, at the children playing near the tables, at the walls of the center they had built. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "From one unexpected question, you gave me a whole new life." Evan turned her toward him, his eyes warm. "Because family isn't where we come from, it's who we choose to stay for." They stood there as the first stars lit the sky, their fingers intertwined, their daughter laughing in the background. Not a fairy tale, something better, something real, forever. Thank you for walking with us through this unforgettable journey of resilience, redemption, and unconditional love. The Homeless Girl in the Millionaire's Heart reminds us that no past is too broken to rewrite, no soul too lost to find its home again. From a cold night under a bridge to a warm garden filled with laughter, June, Evan, and little Lily proved that family is not just made by blood. It's forged through sacrifice, choice, and the courage to love when it's hardest. If this story touched your heart, stirred your soul, or reminded you of the beauty in second chances, we invite you to become part of our growing community. Don't forget to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. Here, every story is more than just words. It's a doorway to healing, hope, and humanity. Subscribe now to Soul Stirring Stories, where every tale leaves a mark on your heart.